Hello, everyone. This is Kim, and we are at Genesis 41. Thanks for joining me for the read. One night, 2 years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing on the bank of the Nile River when suddenly 7 sleek, fat cows came up out of the river and began grazing in the grass. Then 7 other cows came up from the river, but they were very skinny and all their ribs stood out. They went over and stood beside the fat cows. Then the skinny cows ate the fat ones, at which point Pharaoh woke up. Soon he fell asleep again and had a second dream. This time he saw 7 heads of grain on one stalk, with every kernel well formed and plump. Then suddenly 7 more heads appeared on the stalk, but these were shriveled and withered by the east wind, and these thin heads swallowed up the 7 plump, well formed heads. Then Pharaoh woke up again and realized it was all a dream. Next morning, as he thought about it, he became very concerned as to what the dreams might mean. He called for all the magicians and sages of Egypt and told them about it, but none of them could suggest what his dreams meant. Then the king's wine taster spoke up. "Today I remember my sin," he said. "Some time ago, when you were angry with a couple of us and put me and the chief baker in jail in the castle of the captain of the guard, the chief baker and I each had a dream one night. We told the dreams to a young Hebrew fellow there, who was a slave of the captain of the guard, and he told us what our dreams meant, and everything happened just as he said. I was restored to my position of wine taster, and the chief baker was executed and impaled on a pole." Pharaoh sent at once for Joseph. He was brought hastily from the dungeon, and after a quick shave and a change of clothes, came in before Pharaoh. "I had a dream last night," Pharaoh told him, "and none of these men can tell me what it means, but I have heard that you can interpret dreams, and that is why I have called for you." "I can't do it by myself," Joseph replied, "but God will tell you what it means." So Pharaoh told him the dream. "I was standing upon the bank of the Nile River," he said, "when suddenly 7 fat, healthy-looking cows came up out of the river and began grazing along the river bank. But then 7 other cows came up from the river, very skinny and bony, in fact. I've never seen such poor-looking specimens in all the land of Egypt, and these skinny cattle ate up the 7 fat ones that had come out first, and afterward they were still as skinny as before. Then I woke up. A little later I had another dream. This time there were 7 heads of grain on one stalk, and all 7 heads were plump and full. Then out of the same stalk came 7 withered thin heads, and the thin heads swallowed up the fat ones. I told all this to my magicians, but none of them could tell me the meaning." "Both dreams mean the same thing," Joseph told Pharaoh. "God was telling you what he is going to do here in the land of Egypt. The 7 fat cows and also the 7 fat, well formed heads of grain mean that there are 7 years of prosperity ahead. The 7 skinny cows and also the 7 thin and withered heads of grain indicate that there will be 7 years of famine following the 7 years of prosperity. So God has showed you what he is about to do. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout all the land of Egypt, but afterwards there will be 7 years of famine, so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten and wiped out. Famine will consume the land. The famine will be so terrible that even the memory of the good years will be erased. The double dream gives double impact, showing that what I have told you is certainly going to happen, for God has decreed it, and it is going to happen soon. My suggestion is that you find the wisest man in Egypt and put him in charge of administering a national farm program. Let Pharaoh divide Egypt into 5 administrative districts, and let the officials of those districts gather into the royal storehouses all the excess crops of the next 7 years, so that there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come. Otherwise, disaster will surely strike." Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his assistants. As they discussed who should be appointed for the job, Pharaoh said, "Who could do it better than Joseph? For he is a man who is obviously filled with the Spirit of God." Turning to Joseph, Pharaoh said to him, "Since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, you are the wisest man in the country. I am hereby appointing you to be in charge of this entire project. What you say goes throughout all the land of Egypt. I alone will outrank you." Then Pharaoh placed his own signet ring on Joseph's finger as a token of his authority, and dressed him in beautiful clothing, and placed the royal gold chain about his neck, and declared, "See, I have placed you in charge of all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh also gave Joseph the chariot of his second in command, and wherever he went the shout arose, "Kneel down." And Pharaoh declared to Joseph, "I, the king of Egypt, swear that you shall have complete charge over all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh gave him a name meaning he has the godlike power of life and death, and he gave him a wife, a girl named Asenath, daughter of Potipherah, priest of Heliopolis. So Joseph became famous throughout the land of Egypt. He was 30 years old as he entered the service of the king. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and began traveling all across the land. And sure enough, for the next 7 years there were bumper crops everywhere. During those 7 years, Joseph requisitioned for the government a portion of all the crops grown throughout Egypt, storing them in nearby cities. After 7 years of this, the granaries were full to overflowing, and there was so much that no one kept track of the amount. During this time, before the arrival of the first of the famine years, two sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of the sun god Re of Heliopolis. Joseph named his oldest son Manasseh, meaning made to forget. What he meant was that God had made up to him for all the anguish of his youth, and for the loss of his father's home. The second boy was named Ephraim, meaning fruitful, for God has made me fruitful in this land of my slavery, he said. So at last the 7 years of plenty had come to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. There were crop failures in all the surrounding countries, too, but in Egypt there was plenty of grain in the storehouses. The people began to starve. They pled with Pharaoh for food, and he sent them to Joseph. "Do whatever he tells you to do," he instructed them. So now, with severe famine all over the world, Joseph opened up the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians and to those from other lands who came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. When Joseph heard that there was grain available, I'm sorry, when Jacob heard that there was grain available in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing around looking at one another? I have heard that there is grain available in Egypt. Go down and buy some for us before we all starve to death." So Joseph's 10 older brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. However, Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with them, for fear some harm might happen to him as it had to his brother Joseph. So it was that Israel's sons arrived in Egypt along with many others from many lands to buy food, for the famine was as severe in Canaan as it was everywhere else. Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of the sale of the grain, it was to him that the brothers came and bowed low before him. With their faces to the earth, Joseph recognized them instantly, but pretended he didn't. "Where are you from?" he demanded roughly. "From the land of Canaan," they replied. "We have come to buy grain." Then Joseph remembered the dreams of long ago, but he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see how destitute the famine has made our land." "No, no," they exclaimed. "We have come to buy food. We are all brothers and honest men, sir. We are not spies." "Yes, you are," he insisted. "You have come to see how weak we are." "Sir," they said, "there are 12 of us brothers, and our father is in the land of Canaan. Our youngest brother is there with our father, and one of our brothers is dead." "So," Joseph asked, "what does that prove? You are spies. This is the way I will test your story. I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you are not going to leave Egypt until this younger brother comes here. One of you go and get your brother. I'll keep the rest of you here, bound in prison. Then we'll find out whether your story is true or not. If it turns out that you don't have a younger brother, then I'll know you are spies." So he threw them all into jail for 3 days. The third day Joseph said to them, I am a God-fearing man, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to prove yourselves. I'm going to take a chance that you are honorable. Only one of you shall remain in chains in jail, and the rest of you may go on home with grain for your families, but bring your youngest brother back to me. In this way I will know whether you are telling me the truth, and if you are, I will spare you. To this they agreed. Speaking among themselves, they said, This has all happened because of what we did to Joseph long ago. We saw his terror and anguish and heard his pleadings, but we wouldn't listen. Didn't I tell you not to do it? Reuben asked, but you wouldn't listen, and now we're going to die because we murdered him. Of course, they didn't know that Joseph understood them as he was standing there, for he had been speaking to them through an interpreter. Now he left the room and found a place where he could weep. Returning, he selected Simeon from among them and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then ordered his servants to fill the men's sacks with grain, but also gave secret instructions to put each brother's payment at the top of his sack. He also gave them provisions for their journey. So they loaded up their donkeys with the grain and started for home. But when they stopped for the night and one of them opened his sack to get some grain to feed the donkeys, there was his money in the mouth of the sack. Look, he exclaimed to his brothers, my money is here in my sack. They were filled with terror. Trembling, they exclaimed to each other, What is this that God has done to us? So they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan and told him all that had happened. The king's chief assistant spoke very roughly to us, they told him, and took us for spies. No, no, we said, we are honest men, not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is dead, and the youngest is with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man told us, This is the way I will find out if you are what you claim to be. Leaving one of your brothers here with me, take grain for your families and go on home, but bring your youngest brother back to me. Then I shall know whether you are spies or honest men. If you prove to be what you say, then I will give you back your brother, and you can come as often as you like to purchase grain. As they emptied out the sacks, there at the top of each was the money paid for the grain. Terror gripped them, as it did their father. Then Jacob exclaimed, You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph didn't come back. Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin too? Everything has been against me. Then Reuben said to his father, Kill my 2 sons if I don't bring Benjamin back to you. I'll be responsible for him. But Jacob replied, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother Joseph is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children. If anything should happen to him, I would die. But there was no relief from the terrible famine throughout the land. When the grain they had brought from Egypt was almost gone, their father said to them, Go again and buy us a little food. But Judah told him the man wasn't fooling one bit when he said, Don't ever come back again unless your brother is with you. We cannot go unless you let Benjamin go with us. Why did you ever tell him you had another brother? Israel moaned. Why do you have to treat me like that? But the man specifically asked us about our family, they told him. He wanted to know whether our father was still living, and he asked us if we had another brother, so we told him. How could we know that he was going to say, Bring me your brother? Judah said to his father, Send the lad with me, and we will be on our way. Otherwise, we will all die of starvation. And not only we, but you and all our little ones. I guarantee his safety. If I don't bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame forever. For we could have gone and returned by this time if you had let him come. So their father Israel finally said to them, If it can't be avoided, then at least do this. Load your donkeys with the best products of the land, take them to the man as gifts, balm, honey, spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double money so that you can pay back what was in the mouths of your sacks, as it was probably someone's mistake, and take your brother and go. May God Almighty give you mercy before the man, so that he will release Simeon and return Benjamin. And if I must bear the anguish of their deaths, then so be it. So they took the gifts and double money, and went to Egypt, and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw that Benjamin was with them, he said to the manager of his household, "These men will eat with me this noon. Take them home and prepare a big feast." So the man did as he was told and took them to Joseph's palace. They were badly frightened when they saw where they were being taken. "It's because of the money returned to us in our sacks," they said. "He wants to pretend we stole it and seize us as slaves, with our donkeys." As they arrived at the entrance to the palace, they went over to Joseph's household manager and said to him, "Oh, sir, after our trip to Egypt to buy food, as we were returning home we stopped for the night and opened our sacks, and the money was there that we had paid for the grain. Here it is, we have brought it back again, along with additional money to buy more grain. We have no idea how the money got into our sacks." "Don't worry about it," the household manager told them. "Your God, even the God of your fathers, must have put it there, for we collected your money all right." Then he released Simeon and brought him out to them. They they conducted into the palace and given water to refresh their feet, and their donkeys were fed. Then they got their presents ready for Joseph's arrival at noon, for they were told that they would be eating there. When Joseph came home, they gave him their presents, bowing low before him. He asked how they had been getting along, and "How is your father? The old man you spoke about, is he still alive?" "Yes," they replied, "he is alive and well." Then again they bowed before him. Looking at his brother Benjamin, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? How are you, my son? God be gracious to you." Then Joseph made a hasty exit, for he was overcome with love for his brother, and had to go out and cry. Going into his bedroom, he wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, keeping himself under control. "Let's eat," he said. Joseph ate by himself. His brothers were served at a separate table, and the Egyptians at still another, for Egyptians despise Hebrews and never eat with them. He told each of them where to sit, and seated them in the order of their ages, from the oldest to the youngest, much to their amazement. Their food was served to them from his own table. He gave the largest serving to Benjamin, 5 times as much as to any of the others. They had a wonderful time, bantering back and forth, and the wine flowed freely. And that's the end of our reading today. That kind of got me at the end there when Joseph had to leave the room and cry. And I pray that you have a great day and God bless you. I'll talk to you next time.